All right. Good day. Greetings. We are back. I told you I was coming again to give you some more conversations, some more reflections. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Odessa, doctor of natural medicine, womb wellness coach, and I wanted to come back on for this episode and talk about uh, the part of my trip where we went to the Cape Coast, where we went to the slave dungeons in Ghana. So, for those of you who have been following my journey, and for those of you who have not, I spent the last 6 weeks in Ghana traveling around. We stayed in Accra and visited many different areas. And upon returning to Canada, I've decided to just, do a couple of podcasts, recordings, lives on my social media platforms to share. There were a lot of yous who joined in on the journey and commented that you appreciated the different things that I was sharing. And so I figured that we could all use some closure. So I'll just make sure to cover the last couple of bases and not to drag this out too long because I have been back. It's been about 2 weeks. I didn't post right away. But yeah, so we went to Ghana. We visited Ghana. It was my whole family, 2 adults and 3 children, and plus, sorry, 3 adults and 3 children, and it was quite the experience. One thing I tell people who are from the Caribbean is, if you're used to being in the Caribbean, or people who have visited developing countries or the Caribbean, if you have spent any extended period of time there, extended like more than a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you would be somewhat used to the infrastructure that we experienced while we were in Ghana. So, I had some friends who were like, I'm pretty bougie. I don't know if I can handle it. You got to know what you can and cannot handle, And so once again, like I said, having network of people, having, connections that you can reach out to make sure that you have your needs met is of the utmost importance. So during our second week, we went to the Cape Coast, and we visited one of the homes the home that we were staying in was also a guest home for one of the presidential candidates. So it was quite beautiful in terms of presentation, how it looked, situated off of not too far from the beach. Oh, excuse me. Excuse me. Sorry. So that home that we stayed at wasn't too far from the beach. And it was just picturesque. From the balcony, you're looking right out onto the water and you're seeing like 3 different shades of blue, gray, green. Like it was just so picturesque, And so, we were staying in it. Well, Cape Coast in general is a relatively residential area. So if you're looking for things to do, I think it'll be best to have someone who can guide you. Like for ourselves, we didn't have a guide. And so I think members of my family were kind of, expecting a little bit more because Accra was so bumping and bustling. So it was a lot quieter when we got there. But we had gone for a walk by the water, but I found the waters in Cape Coast to be a lot rougher than in the different beaches in Accra. And so, we got up that morning and I really, really had no expectations. I didn't think about where we were going. I didn't even know that the dungeons were an option on our trip. So that's just my own thing. But we went to decided we were going to go to Cape Coast Slave Dungeon. And it was, I have mixed feelings about it. So I had conversations with other people who I know who are living in Cape Coast, who are living in Accra. And there's a group of people who just feel that going to the slave dungeons doesn't do the Ma'afa any justice. It doesn't do our ancestors any justice. And so they don't. They haven't gone to visit. They don't promote it. They, usually speak, I mean, not negatively of it, but they speak in a way of like, we need to do better and we need to move beyond this. And so I definitely understand because of the feeling that it brings you, like there's a definite stuckness that we as a people are experiencing, there's a righteous anger that we do all have, there's a real palpable experience that we are all living. And so, the process of being there, depending on how you process information, emotion, how you are dealing with the whole genetic memory of this. I think every answer is valid. For myself, I felt it was really important to visit at least one castle. So in Cape Coast, there are two castles. There is Elmina, which is the first slave castle, and then there is Cape Coast, give thanks for that, love, which is one of the more recent castles that were built in the 1700s, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on the timing, okay? But I'm the type of person where I think it's important to listen to the stories of people whose voices are not able to be heard. If I have the time, and if I have the emotional capacity, I will stop and listen to a video. I will, let something play, that might be more difficult for the average person to listen to, because that person's experience, they're saying it because they need to hear it on the outside of them, or someone needs to hear it to feel validated. And so I like to give them that benefit of the doubt of hearing your story. What was it that you did? Do you need to be heard? So that was my approach leading up to going into the slave dungeons. They call it a castle. I can't call these things castles. When I think of castles, I think of royalty and wonderful things. I don't think of slave dungeons and all. Anyways, okay. So upon arrival, it was quite interesting. So in my family, we tend to ask different kinds of questions to get people thinking. And my spouse, he had asked one of the employees there, he was like, they're talking about the church that is built into the castle. And he was like, well, what has the church done for African people and people of African descent, since the slave trade? And it sparked a whole conversation, and it caused a lot of discomfort amongst the people around there, because I don't know that they've been challenged in that way with that kind of question. And he's pretty unrelenting. He has dates in his mind, events in his mind, like he really did the research, throughout his own life to understand African history. So being in the slave dungeons and speaking with the tour guides about the plight of the underdeveloped nations that we all see nowadays, like that. Okay, he was in his wheelhouse. Okay, like I'll let you guys know that for sure. And so that was how the whole afternoon started. It was like, okay, you guys got to recognize that this is a group of talkative tourists, meaning myself and another party that was with us. Like, we knew our history. We were asking questions. So I also had my 3 younger children with me. So I have 4 children. My eldest is 20, and the 3 younger ones are 10, 9, and 7. So we had them with us on this tour. And it was, it is healing. It was, I don't even know how to explain it. There's like this anxiety, there's an excitement, there's an anxiety, there's a dread, there's a sadness, The tour guide, he was a little bit somber. Mind you, it isn't the kind of experience that you need to be excessively jovial about either. Like, there really isn't anything to joke about. So we started off with the male dungeons, and he brought us down inside and was describing to us, the level of ventilation that was almost non-existent, the amount of people that they were filling into one room, and we were standing in the room, like there's no light, there's, only your phones. You might have one light bulb in the hallway. He points to the floor, and you find out that you're standing on fecal matter, vomit, and, all kinds of bodily fluids that are mixed with sand, that the other helper slaves, and oftentimes mulattoes, would come in and mix the ground up, because there's people who are standing together for an indeterminate amount of time until, they're in captivity, until they're being forced onto the boat through the door of no return, right? And so there's no bathrooms, you might have some water that seeps, that gets thrown in, from those small, like really small ventilated windows. Like, I'm not even joking, the size of my diploma, actually this one here, you'd have a huge room, and there's like 150 to 200 men, he said, can fit into that room. And you had maybe 3 windows like that, like it was gruesome. It really was. So I spent a lot of time with my gathering my children close to me. I spent a lot of time, just repeating different prayers and mantras, sending love and light into the space. It was really difficult to go through. We walked, through the male dungeons, and then visited, the area where the slave masters would be, where the captains would be. And you saw like their big windows and, beautiful ventilation and, a view of the sea. And it's like just this weird ass experience, like how disconnected, what I mean? What kind of like psychology is being used? We see it here today, but like to be in the actual place where they justified it. And the whole time, we're there and we're speaking. Oh yeah, I'm going to answer that in a second. The whole time we were there speaking, he's talking about, the women in the dungeon, and and how, if they refused to be raped, they were put into a particular area where they were kept for weeks on end until they acquiesced. Like what? And then he's saying, like upstairs is where the church was. And he's like, and every Sunday, like they're coming to church to love their neighbor like they love themselves, and they're coming to church to, like spread the love of God in the world. And every moment, every time you walk up to the church door, there's an actual like cellar door, like a window that leads down into the male dungeon. So you can hear the lamentations of our ancestors below as you're preparing to go into church and praise the Lord in the way that you know how. Like, can we talk about this disconnection? It is crazy. So you're asking me, how was the energy in the space as an empath and a healer? And this is what I was saying. I spend a lot of time protecting my children and just protecting the energy around us. It was really, really heavy. It was really, really, really heavy. Just walking through and, like listening to the stories and experiencing the feeling of what people may have been experiencing. Now, I stayed, like when I do my work, one of the first things I do is I establish heart resonance, because I find that the heart is a great equalizer. So I spent a lot of time there, and then just kind of, extending that to the children that were around me and to my other family members. I mean, like there were some people there who couldn't handle it. Like there are some women, white women, they came, they were all dressed in white, and they didn't last halfway through the tour, like they went to the side and had to release, they vomited twice. I'm trying to find a better way to say it. They vomited, but just to show you, like it's a really difficult situation. At one moment, the tour guide was talking about, rape and men who were forcing themselves on women. And my son, he didn't understand what he was saying. And he said, he asked, I said, can you repeat, what did he say? And I gave a really brief overview of what that was, what they were doing to the women. And he was so disturbed. He was so bothered. While we were there, we heard a French family speaking, and that familiarity was, it was really wonderful to hear because we are a French-speaking family. I'm born in Montreal, Quebec. My children, 3 out of 4 of my children are born and raised in Montreal, Quebec, and 3 out of 4 of them speak French. And so being there in Cape Coast, in the slave dungeon, and hearing another French woman, another French family, and my children being able to communicate with them, that was such a beautiful moment, where they got to see, well, mom is, really feeding us the second language and we can't get away from it. And she keeps on reassuring us that it's going to come in handy one day. And, we're kind of fighting it. But here we are away from home for 6 weeks, learning about our ancestry, learning about the culture that was, taken away from us, but still resonates deep down inside of us. And in the middle of learning about, and watching these, reenactments of these slaves in chains walk through the tunnel down to the door of no return, you hear someone else speaking a foreign language that you understand in a group of people, who are here to hear the stories. You have someone speaking a quote unquote foreign language, a slash would be, I can almost consider it like a mother tongue. That was very familiar. And I can only imagine how some of our ancestors might have felt, being amongst other, slaves, other people who were taking us hostage in these, massive caves and castles, and hearing familiar voices or hearing familiar sounds. Like, it was just really, really, it was really intense. Like, we're still, processing it. I take a long time to process. And the children have been in school for 2 weeks, and we will be presenting something at the end of this week. I was in no rush to get it to them in the first week. No, we need to really take apart what we saw and allow it to integrate into our tissues, you know what I mean? Like, as we come back into everyday life, I think that we don't take these things into consideration, the time that we need to actually integrate what it is that we are experiencing, So the thing about Cape Coast and that day is when we left the castle. We chose not to go to the second one. We chose not to go to Elmina. And I was okay with that. I felt as though I heard the stories of one route of the slave trade. And so I didn't need in that day to go to another one, especially with the children and the energy being so heavy. So we continued around touring, and then we got home. And while we were getting ready for bed, who falls asleep first, who doesn't fall asleep first, and who bathed and, get up and refresh yourself and all of that. But there was a moment when everyone settled in and everyone was sleeping. And I just felt an energy around us, and I was like, something has followed us, an energy has followed us. It didn't feel as though it was threatening, but it felt as though it attached itself to a kind of empathy or kind of like a pity feeling that was, that gave it access to our group. That's kind of how it felt. And so I got up and I sprayed down the place with, got some Florida water, some rose water. I did my frankincense, and I pulled out some prayers. And there was a moment of change in the room where the energy released itself and left. So that was quite something. It was interesting. waking up the next day and just feeling groggy and heavy. I appreciated the fact that my partner, he brought me some flowers from the front garden. And so I actually went into a flower meditation. Since the whole time that I was in Ghana, I was facilitating healing meditation works groups. I have two groups that I was running, one called the Souls of Black Folk, and the other one is Healing the Planet with Group Energy. And the Souls of Black Folk, the Healing the Planet with Group Energy, we had just done a flower meditation. So I used that same meditation to help process. So, using the elements around us is very helpful, right? Flowers, they help us to connect emotionally and spiritually. Leaves and stalks would be more emotionally. The actual stalk and the stem and the roots would be like a physical experience, right? So every element has different qualities that can help us to process whatever it is that we're going through. Sometimes you might want to wear this particular color, or you might want to eat this instead of eating that. It isn't just about your taste buds, but there really is a cellular intuition that the soul quality is able to embody, and that we actually follow. We actually follow, whether we realize it or not. And so, like we were having this conversation when we returned home, actually, a couple of days ago, where we were saying that we were so grateful to have given the children the opportunity to visit Ghana and to have the context. That's really important, to have the context, because we talk so much about unschooling, quote unquote. Like, my children go to day school. I don't have the patience to homeschool, not yet, but I do a lot of homeschooling or side schooling, or unschooling, however you want. The teachers told you this, well, this is the real truth. We do a lot of this, a lot of videos, a lot of books, a lot of conversations, a lot of like, okay, this happened in the news, let's reflect upon this and that. And so to give the children the opportunity to visit Africa, to visit Ghana, to see the slave castles, to watch the history, to experience the culture of the people, that is a gift in and of itself. I remember a friend of mine, his family is from Cape Verde and Senegal. And years ago, we were like 20, 30, and we were 20, almost 30. But we were having a conversation, and he was saying that, many Africans feel it's of the utmost importance to have a child go home and touch, African soil before the age of 5, because that experience stays with them. And, I thought about it, and I think about when, Caribbean parents send their children home for the summertime, or you go back home for a little bit to be raised by someone. Sometimes it's because you were in trouble, so you need to, have a more stricter upbringing, right? But like, there really is something important. I remember when I first went to the Caribbean, I was 9 years old, and the fact that you were able to support them in that experience, oh man, like I'm so grateful. I am so grateful for the knowledge that we know, that we have, and our ability to convey, what I mean, to really communicate the subtleties of what's happening. And I really hope that they can take that, forward and teach that, through their ways of being. I was saying that my first trip to the Caribbean was at the age of 9. And I remember the trip. I remember the qualities of the trip. I remember, everybody leaving me, and I had to stay at home and pull in the goats and the pigs and feed them and all that stuff. And they thought I was having fun. I was a bit upset, because why are you guys leaving me? But I really did enjoy myself, right? And any other trip after that, I remember the trip, but that first moment on soil, of like coming out of the airport and seeing the foliage and seeing these shiny Black faces and hearing this foreign language, like, it's really important. And so for children, of the diaspora specifically, like we know now what we're up against. We have a better idea. Social media has been proving itself over and over again. There was a moment, I remember one of my teachers was like, yeah, well, slavery happened to everybody. And I remember looking at her like, I want to tell you a lot of stuff, but I didn't have the articulated nuances that I had now to speak. And she passed away. So I want to be like, look at everything that's happening online. But yes, as we see what's happening online, we're understanding the layers of subtleness that are oppressing, suppressing our people. And for our babies, them being able to see their parents in a healthier environment and see where they're coming from, I think that's really important. So that was my reflection in terms of like the children being there. Like we've had conversations about lynches, about rapes, about slavery, all related to racism and all that. So I feel as though, without forcing anything or without pushing too much on them, but I feel as though they have a good idea, because they can't not know. You can only protect them for so long, right? Yeah, so we spent 2 days rather than 3 days in the Cape Coast, out of the ants of like wanting to do things. So we returned to Accra to get things going again. But it was really like the main thing that I'm seeing here, guys. I'm fixing my hair again because I'm just so cute. Like when you have locks, okay, when you have locks and you're growing them out, like there are certain phases of your hair that you can only catch for like a couple of months, a couple of weeks, a couple of years. So this is me. This is all of me, right? But basically, it was just quite interesting to watch the spirit of the people, to feel and experience the spirit of the people. Like there's no time to do anything else during the day. The last cab driver that I was traveling with, like I was asking him a question and he's like, thank you. He was like, I start at 4 a.m. and it was 6:30 p.m. And he says, I'm probably going to stop around 8 just because it gets dangerous at night. He says, but like all I do is work. All I can do is work. I don't have time to think about anything else. I don't have time to try to do anything else, which got me thinking about this underdevelopedness that I keep on mentioning that they've done to Africa and other developing countries, quote unquote. We call them developing countries. Like everybody goes to Africa for their raw minerals. Everybody goes there. And they have done such an amazing job at underdeveloping the country. It's amazing, and creating so much ethnic fighting. When they were discussing how the British, like made promises with the local tribes and then went against, they doing what they do, and this in turn created different levels of strife and fighting. And whereas the people are beautiful and buoyant and I loved laughing with them and joking with them, like we also got to see moments of like vulnerability in terms of, like these arguments that will break out between, men from different tribes. And it's like the threat that comes over you is like, my gosh, are we going there? It wasn't that serious, So it's like, there's this boiling point, underneath the surface that's just kind of waiting to burst open. And this actually also connects me to that like ancient evil, that exists, that a lot of us are aware of. Some of us are in denial. Some people think it's only good. Some people think it's only bad. And it's like we have to really pay attention to all of who we are, because we are everything. We talk about Haiti and people will say, well, Haiti used black magic to get free. If Haiti didn't use voodoo, Haiti would not have been able to get free from slavery. Okay, we know that for a fact. But these kinds of ancient traditions, and they're using it in the negative way because they want to have power, because they want to live forever. These are the stories that I was hearing in Ghana, okay, about fathers and families going to Benin and having different traditional stuff happen to them and come back so that they can, reign over their land or reign over their compound without having anyone interfere, try to kill them or this and that. Like, these things are real, right? And they exist simultaneously with the same energy that can help people to heal. That, you can reach your hand out and place it on somebody and that person be healed. Like, these things exist. Yeah, you say, wow, I couldn't believe the stories I was hearing. One of our host was giving us a rundown of some of the things that are happening and why some of the men cleave to Christianity. Like, one thing when we were at the National Museum, it was, they broke it down, 72% Christian, 17% Muslim, and less than 5% or around 5% practiced traditional indigenous spirituality. And I just found it so interesting, like, there were churches, man, you want to talk about churches, mega churches, it was quite full all over the place with these churches. So, like we are a people of faith, we are a people of spirit, and so when I think about how we were underdeveloped, when I think about how the different ethnic groups, different tribesmen were put against one another. When I think about the infrastructure that was built up for the colonizers and then left dilapidated or, actually demolished for the locals, like, they did an amazing job, and we are seeing the in real time, how people are trying to untangle themselves from it. Y'all, it was a trip. It really was a trip. Once again, like, if you have the opportunity to visit, I would go back. I would go there before I, book a trip to the Caribbean again. And I've been to 4 or 5 different islands in the Caribbean, some for extended periods of time, and set an intention for yourself. We are at a time in history where we are able to see our intentions unfold in front of us in real time. And for myself, going to Ghana, I set that intention for my business and life, like, what is the direction? Where is it that I need to go? And I mean, life showed me, wow, Spirit showed me so many key moments that happened in my life via the people that I met, via the signs, like, if you ask, it will be shown to you. So I just wanted to come on and share this ending of the journey with you, to share my experiences. I would definitely consider going back to the slave dungeons. I've thought about it. I think about going back with a meditation group, with a spiritual group, to actually do work to raise the energy, to clear the energy, to help release some of the souls that are there. So this would be like a long-term project. I know I had some people who were out there commenting that they do a lot of tours with different diasporans who come to visit them in Accra. And I know they also have Gorée in Senegal. So that's something that I would definitely consider doing. I would consider going back through, it definitely wouldn't be missionary work, but it would be spiritual work to create a healthier vortex, a healthier energy at the slave dungeons, But yeah, I thank you all for being here with me. If you are on the live, let me know. You can type live. And if you are catching the replay, make sure to hashtag replay so that I know who is watching and when, so I can communicate with you. It is always a pleasure to come on and share my stories, my insights, and my feelings with you all about things that are passionate and close to me. So stay tuned as I continue to unfold. I'll be talking a lot more about some of the things that are even more, closer and dear to my heart. I specialize in women's wellness, womb wellness, reproductive health, but there are some other aspects of well-being that I think need to be discussed even more so. So just stay tuned, and that's it. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you guys in another episode. Take care. Bye-bye.